Insanity is the providence between inaccuracy and contradictions. Many medical professionals and lawyers cannot grant a specific definition because there are too many factors that surround the idea of what it is to fall into a state of insanity. The discussion arises whether idiots are classified as insane. Keep in mind that an idiot is a person that is naturally out of mind and is characterized as congenital imbecile. To distinguish between idiocy and insane is to evaluate the psychological and socio-cultural aspect. Insanity is a disease that the public feels should receive no more special entrance or other physical element towards why the state should build or even maintain such facilities for the insane, all of which becomes the entire superstructure of provisions that relate to the care and treatment of the insane.
The idea of being sent to Dunning raised an air of fright into the eyes of little children who misbehaved. Being used as a scare tactic, the real horror lies within the walls of its origin. Cook County Insane Asylum. Dunning was not actually named Dunning. The property south of it, however, was owned by the Dunning family. Dunning was nicknamed after Andrew Dunning. He bought this land after the Civil War to start a village and a nursery. He purchased a total of 120 acres of land. The area was slow to attract new residents. Dunning's property was just south of the Cook County's Insane Asylum, which might have been the case for it.
Started off as a poor farm, the facility was built to help the people who were homeless and had fallen due to hard times. The building later developed an insane department within its walls due to the majority of the homeless having mental issues. The overflowing number of patients admitted to the insane department led to the construction of its asylum. It was built out in the country as a place for relaxation that soon after the years fell apart. In 1874, a reporter from the Chicago Tribune described Dunning's patients as dejected-looking people with matted hair and tattered clothing and crowded and herded together like sheep in shambles or hogs in slaughtering pens. These were clear signs that the patients at Dunning were given inhumane treatment.
Many of the treatments explored were the use of sedatives that reduced irritability and excitement. Most of the time, these high doses resulted in slurred speech, slow reflexes, and staggering gait. The attendants thought that as long as they could be calmed, then they were being cured, which we all know wasn't the case. Various types of treatments were performed. Hydrotherapy used hot and cold water to soothe those patients that were depressed or agitated. Electroshock therapy was given to the poor patients and had to suffer with the pain once a day, every day for years. It was also said that lobotomies, which is the cutting of the brain's frontal lobe, were done to Dunning's patients outside of Dunning.
During 1884, not many questions were raised whether insane should, in fact, receive any special treatment, not until a topic of discussion rose within the Illinois Board of Public Charities at the request of various public bodies of the city of Chicago. In 1886, a special investigation of Cook County Hospital for the Insane towards its management and care was being evaluated. The case being the laxity of discipline, insubordination on the part of the employees, conflict of their authority between the officers, and in general, the institute lacks supervision.
Food furnished is insufficient to the amount of inmates accounted within the asylum's premises. Food lacks variety. Even so, that what is being given to the patients is inferior in quality and poorly cooked. This raises questions about the dietary plan being given to the patients. It has been to the extreme extent that the poor quality of food has led to an epidemic of scurvy. Scurvy being the cause of prolonged deficiency of vitamin C. It makes sense that the patients were not immune to this condition because of the environment they were placed in malnourishment.
1885. Many complaints made against the appointing of employees through political friendship resulted in the act of attendants who lacked experience and were incapable of following through the work ethics. The investigation in 1886 also discovered the patient's sedatives contained a mixture of chloral hydrate as well as cannabis, hops, and potash. It was also found that Dunning served 2 tugs of beer a day. Both patients and employees were drinking the beer. In 1889, Dunning was described by Robert Prendergast as a tumult for the living. 2 attendants were also charged with the murder of patient Robert Burns. It was said that he was kicked and had a gash on his head. Even though many blamed the individual employees, they were found innocent and blamed Dunning's overcrowdedness. The entire management of the hospital rose to questioning between the state's commissioners, exploring how work ethics come across the values of morality. The commissioners made suggestions that would allow the asylum to keep running, but in a more humane manner. Many of these suggestions were accepted and adopted by the county board. This allowed for enough evidence to circulate and combine towards the conviction that the care of the insane was being imperial, such to the extent that the care and treatment should be not entrusted to the county's authorities without supervision or some control of the state to provide proper guidelines. In 1892, things started to ameliorate. A generalist that had gone to Dunning the same year described it as somewhat better. It was said that he didn't encounter the same horrors others had witnessed in earlier times. In 1895, a civil service law was passed, which might have been the reason for the improvement due to the civil service law acting upon the problems with patronage. In 1910, conditions had already been improving at Dunning over the previous decade. In 1912, the state finally took over Dunning and was officially renamed as Chicago State Hospital. Patients were now given more space and comfort. They were treated with more attention and caution. It makes sense in the socio-cultural aspect of history why people treated the insane the way they did. It was because they did not quite understand how to provide or evaluate such humans who lacked mental abilities.
Dunning became an overcrowded facility as time progressed because of the increased number of patients being transferred to the facility. It had barely any space for its inmates. There were 2 patients in nearly every single room at Dunning in 1890. The overcrowdedness caused many problems with the peace and quiet of the institute. The conditions of the facility were not in good shape due to the fact that patients lived in overcrowded stalls. Dunning got into horrible shape, but over time, Dunning had many things changed and improved. In 1891, there were new floors laid in almost every single room. The corridors, walls, and ceilings were painted. Glass was placed in the doors of the southern entrance, which gave more light to the entrance. Additionally, cooling rooms for meats were added. There were cottages built. Each cottage had space for 50 patients, and each cottage was 2 stories tall. The cottages had bathrooms, lavatories, and water closets, and all the corridors, rooms, etc. were lighted by electrical light. Outside of the cottages, there was stoned pavement laid along the front of the cottages, lawns, and flower beds. There were 808 insane inmates present. The inmates were clothed and were clean, and generally had good health. Dunning drastically improved its conditions as a cause of public opinion, economical growth, and political involvement.
Dunning was known for its disgusting and inhumane treatments and injustices towards its patients. However, around the 1900s, it completely changed and improved its management.